We are live and
Does the future of mobility, transportation, and travel lie with batteries or hydrogen? Invest for Tomorrow with Kay, Disruptive Wealth Creation, and Money Whiskey and Coffee invite you to a live session on Sunday, the 25th of July, to discuss the pros and cons of each technology, where each sector is headed, and what are the opportunities for us investors. The live session will be taking place at 3 p.m. UK time and 10 a.m. Eastern time. Link for the live session will be in the description below. We're looking forward to seeing you there.
Hi, Manos.
Hi, Steve.
Okay, I'm just I'm just looking. Our heads are different shapes and sizes.
all right, let me try this. Let me try
All
different.
right.
I think this is a better one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. We still have about few seconds, but I think we can. Let's give another few seconds. Let it be 10 o'clock here or 3 p.m. and we will give it a shot.
Yeah, I have the stream open in my other screen, and it is live.
Perfect. Okay. So how's everyone doing today?
Okay.
Yeah, good. I had my second
Yes, how did that go?
dose. Yeah, okay. Uneventful.
Did you get a badge?
Yeah, I got a sticker on my card
Oh, okay.
saying I had both doses.
Sure.
That's amazing. Okay, so that's Manos actually his screen, which is on for live stream. That's perfect. Okay, so it's 10 o'clock here in Eastern Standard Time, and it's 3 p.m. in UK. So let's go ahead and start. Welcome everyone. This is our first live stream together as a joint group here, and what I want to first start off with is introduce ourselves and our channels, because there will be viewers who will be watching this after the live stream ends. So why don't we start off with some introductions? Who, Steve, Manos, whoever wants to start off first.
I'll start then quickly, because I'm on top and you're below, so you have to wait. So basically, I have a channel which is called Disruptive Wealth Creation, and it's all about companies that are disruptive. So a lot of them are growth stocks in all sorts of industries, whether it be the electric car industry like Tesla, or whether it might be in biotech like CRISPR AG, for example. There's also other sort of disruptive companies. Most recent video I did one was on the space and Virgin Galactic. So I try and go across a broader of different stocks. And as well as that, I like to sort of dabble a bit in cryptocurrency, which is something that excites me and I enjoy doing. So that's me. Manos?
Okay, so I'm Manos. I live in the UK as well as Steve. I'm not from the UK originally. I have a channel called Money Whiskey and Coffee. I cover stocks in the 3D printing industry, general industrial manufacturing, this kind of stuff. My background is in engineering. I actually work with electric vehicles at the moment. I have experience in the power distribution industry as well, and I basically take all this knowledge and apply it to my investment strategy.
That's amazing. So we have actually a resident expert in electric vehicles today on the channel.
No, not so much, but they.
Perfect. My name is Kay. I live in the US. I'm not originally from US, but I've been here for over a decade now. I have been investing for over a decade now. My channel is Invest for Tomorrow with Kay, and the main focus of my channel is to promote the idea of investing and encourage all users to invest regardless of your age. The focus is mostly on teaching people different techniques on how you can invest. I cover stocks. Mostly my stocks are growth stocks. I do cover some dividend stocks on my channel as well. I also try to cover some tips and tricks on how you can enhance your portfolio by having a combination of dividend and growth stocks. So if you are watching this after the live stream ends, feel free to check out our channels. The links will be in the description. So definitely go check out Steve's channel, Mano's channel, and give them a thumbs up and support their channel. Okay, so I think so. Let's start off with our what is the theme for our today's session. The today's session's theme will be which technology will win, whether it will be the electric technology or the hydrogen fuel cell. And the way we will structure our discussion today is we will break down our discussion into three segments. But the first segment will be the car segment. The second segment will be the truck, and I know we call it lorry in UK, so yes, it will be lorry as well. And then the third segment would be the aviation. So if we have enough time, we will also get more into the some additional topics if we have enough time. The way we will structure all of these segments will be we'll touch upon some very important topics for each of these segments will be cost of ownership, running costs, servicing options, what is the practicality of having these different technologies in these sectors, the environmental impact, that's very important, some of safety impacts, how are these technologies safe apart from the internal fuel combustion engine we have. And we'll talk about examples of the leaders from these industries, and then how you can, as an investor, have investment opportunities. So we'll touch upon those as well. So before I start, does anybody have any other questions? Steve, Manus, any?
No.
The way we will structure it is I will pose a question, I will, and then I'll open it for some discussion,
Okay.
and then as we go through these, we'll just bring it up, as we go through it.
Sure.
No, that sounds fine. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so let's kick it off with our first segment. Before I begin that, for the viewers, if you are watching this after the live session has ended, I will put some of the timestamps as well for each segment. So if you want to skip to a specific segment you like, feel free to do so. So we're starting with our segment one, the passenger cars. Now, I think one of the biggest questions we have in the passenger cars, because this will be the most popular among all the retail investors, is because their focus mostly is on passenger cars, is which technology do you personally think, and just your personal opinion, is going to be the most widely used technology, at least in the coming decade or so? So I'll open it up. Steve, Manos, whoever wants to take it first.
Battery, hands down, when it comes to passenger cars. For 90%, and that's maybe I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to hydrogen. For 90% of people, battery is fine. Is absolutely fine. There is charging infrastructure. There are instances where people don't have access to chargers and they can't have access to chargers, and this is an objective reality. I am one of those people. I can't have a charger where I live. I don't have a charger at work, and I would need to go out of my way, actually, in order to charge an electric vehicle at this moment in time. The situation is getting better, obviously. So I think, yeah, it makes sense for a passenger car to have a battery powertrain, battery powered powertrain, electric vehicle, full electric vehicle. Now, there are some use cases, however, that hydrogen would actually make sense. And the reason is energy density. Now, granted, there's not a lot of infrastructure for actually charging your hydrogen powered car. And this is getting better, obviously, but again, it's in its infancy, at least here in the UK. I was looking at the network, and it's almost non-existent for large parts of the UK when it comes to hydrogen. However, imagine a use case where we have a taxi that takes people to and from airports, which are that's a lot of miles, and you almost need that to be running 24/7. Charging times with batteries at the moment with current technology, we're not talking about solid state batteries, which are in the future. We're talking about current lithium ion batteries. It's about 20 minutes. Hydrogen is 5 minutes. It's equivalent to what you would top up with diesel or petrol at the moment. And I think that's where hydrogen has the potential in passenger vehicles to fill a niche or for people that are doing a lot of miles, like sales representatives that go up and down the country, and they don't want to spend half an hour, 1 hour, 40 minutes supercharging an electric car and waiting. They want stop, top up 5 minutes, toilet, back in the car, off they go. I see a niche filling, a niche that the hydrogen cars can fill there. But for the majority of people, battery electric vehicle, yeah.
Steve, how about
Yeah,
you?
I'm sort of in agreement with Manos. I think basically the electric cars have moved far ahead of the hydrogen cars in as much as the infrastructure's there. I mean, if you have an electric car, you can charge it up at a supermarket. You can charge it up on the public road if there's chargers at a car park. The price of the vehicles have also dropped. Okay, and if we look at sort of the figures worldwide, I mean, Tesla sold 500,000 cars, just under 500,000 cars in 2020. VW sold 230,000 cars. NIO sold 100,000 cars. The Renault Clio E-Tech 95,000. Xpeng 35,000 cars. So yeah, I mean, I mean, if you was to compare that to hydrogen cars, I mean, they're negligible. Again, they haven't got the infrastructure. I did some research, and there's only 17 stations where you can charge up your vehicle in the UK. So the infrastructure isn't there. So even if you had the vehicle, where would you charge it up? It just wouldn't work. So that's why I'm saying the electric vehicles are ahead. I mean, it's possible. It's possible that hydrogen will catch up at a later date, but not soon. So I think, you know, whether we like it or not, I think we're probably stuck with electric cars. Governments obviously have indicated that they want us to have electric cars. In the UK, you won't be able to buy a petrol or a diesel car after 2030. In California, it's 2035, 5 years later. I'm not sure what it is in the rest of the USA, but obviously the government's obviously concerned about climate change. They want to reduce emissions and all that kind of stuff. And it just so happens that the electric cars are ahead. And until the other guys catch up, that's what we're going to have for the moment.
No, that's amazing, Steve, Anos. I think I totally agree with you on this point as well. And I want to share something interesting while we are watching that. So let me share my screen. And this is the... Let me know if you can see my screen. Yep,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
So this is the report which I was, researching on from Volkswagen. And Volkswagen has come in support that they want to actually move forward with electrification, as they think it's going to be the winning technology in the future. And this is one of the reasons they gave over here, was that by the time you use electricity to charge a battery versus hydrogen, the overall efficiency reduces by the time it gets from the tank to the wheel. So you get 70 to 90% overall efficiency in the electric car, whereas for the hydrogen car, it drops between 20 to 35%. And also, as you rightly pointed out, that the technology, not the technology, but the infrastructure that is needed to be built around, I think it's not there yet. And the other problem we have is we have, electrification has begun. I see the charging stations everywhere now. So just like you have a gas station, at least in the US where I am, at least in the East Coast, that is how we are seeing. And especially in the California side, the number of charging stations you have, companies like ChargePoint, Blink, they are expanding their charging station. I don't know. I don't have any idea, or I haven't seen any hydrogen fueling station here, at least nearby. I know where the commercial fleets are, you see those hydrogen refueling stations, but it's not near any residential area or commercial area. It's very off the highway. You will see some specific where commercial trucks and vehicles are there.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. I have another report that let me see if
Yep.
I can
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
get it on. And I can share my screen. Yeah, I found how to do that.
Yeah, it's at the
Let me
bottom.
know.
You will say share. Yep, perfect.
Yeah, it says analysis of hydrogen fuel battery efficiency. So
Oh, 1 second. Let
obviously,
me add to the stream. Yep, perfect. We can see it.
okay. So it's this report from Copenhagen, that's Denmark, and they've done an analysis on passenger vehicles, obviously, fuel cell, hydrogen versus battery. Where fuel cell kind of wins, hands down, is overall vehicle weight. If you want to increase the range, the weight of the vehicle kind of stays the same with hydrogen. Uh, you have only minor increases, while with batteries, you can see that the weight of the vehicle goes up and up and up as you want to increase the range. And that's energy density. However, uh, when we look at efficiency, this supports what you showed us before, Kay, that the overall efficiency for a battery vehicle, from when you generate the electricity all the way to charge the vehicle, is about 76%, but with hydrogen is about 23%.
Right.
And also there is the cost as well. The cost to produce hydrogen at the moment is quite expensive. So the price per kilometer is 0.03 for a Tesla Model 3. For a Toyota Mirai is 3 times that, a bit more than 3 times that actually, 0.095 euros. So uh, there are some other graphs here, but their conclusion is that, yeah, for passenger vehicles, battery electric is the most efficient at the moment. They do say, however, that hydrogen makes sense for very long distance applications like trucks, trains, and these kind of applications. It makes sense for these types of applications. And I am going to throw a curveball, let's say here. I grew up in a city where we didn't have designated parking like a lot of people in cities like London may have. In the flats that they live in, they have designated parking space and they can install a charger there. All cars were parked in the middle of the street, not in the middle of the street, in the side of the
Side of the
street.
street. Yeah.
Yeah, wherever you could find. In instances like this, electric vehicles aren't the best because you can't have a guaranteed space under your under your house in order to charge your car. I can see in cities like these, hydrogen actually being the preferred solution, because old petrol stations, gas stations, they can be retrofitted for hydrogen, obviously, and people can use hydrogen vehicles in these kind of areas, in these kind of cities. We have to kind of think beyond how we live our lives, because it's a global thing. It's the shift is going to be global. It's not going to be, at least in the Western world. We can discuss that if we have time later on, what's going to happen in developing markets. But obviously we can see that in country A, yeah, battery electric vehicles are the dominant car, and in other countries hydrogen, for practical reasons. Obviously, the practicality is what is going to drive adoption. If you try to force something that's not practical to consumers, even if it's government mandated, well, the consumers are going to vote this government out, and they're going to bring another government in that's going to offer something more practical.
Agreed. Steve, what are your thoughts about the overall?
About the hydrogen. Well, the first thing I would say is that I used to, for a short while, I drove a Toyota Elantra car, which I converted to dual fuel, and I had LNPG gas, and that was quite an interesting experience. Because to be honest with you, for the first few weeks, I had what's called the Hindenburg syndrome. Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
Do you remember that big plane in the sky?
Yeah.
It was like a
Yeah.
balloon. It blew up. And when I used to drive on the motorway, in my boot, I had a big like tank. It was like it was just like a big tank thing full of gas. And I thought, oh my God, if somebody ever hits me or I get involved in a crash, is it going to be an explosion? Obviously, that was never going to happen. But it's a psychological thing, you know. And there have been lots of sort of disasters. There was one in Sandvika, Norway, and another one at Santa Clara where there was a big chemical explosion.
Yeah.
So some people still have that sort of thing in their head. But I think that the thing that I was looking at, and I don't know how practical this is that one of the advantages they say about hydrogen is that you could actually use the refueling stations, the ones that we use gas for, the ones that we use for petrol and diesel. You could use those filling stations as places for installing hydrogen.
You could. It's a completely different pump. It's a
Right.
completely different system because you are supplying high pressure gas instead of liquid. Completely, it will need a retrofit. It's just that the places are there; they're designated already. And what you said was really interesting about having the Hindenburg syndrome. We don't really understand that. When we are talking about propulsion, moving a lump of metal, which is our car essentially forward, it takes a lot of energy. And this energy is stored somewhere. Now, if we're talking about a internal combustion engine, this energy is stored in our fuel tank. And below our feet, there is flammable liquid going into an engine, and it's actually exploding in a controlled way. And this explosion doesn't kill us. And if everything goes right, and if the car is properly maintained, it won't spontaneously combust, burning us into a fiery inferno. Batteries are no different. You have an enormous amount of energy stored in a combined space, and there are instances that batteries have failed and they have self-ignited because lithium really likes oxygen a lot, and it reacts quite violently. Also, if a battery fails, it doesn't need oxygen at all to self-ignite, and there have been instances where batteries self-ignite after the fire brigade came in and put the fire out. They self-ignite again.
Right.
And that's because we have a lot of energy stored. And the same goes with our phone. And the fact that our phone doesn't blow up in our pockets and burn our genitals. Sorry, that's it. Again, it's something that we don't take. We don't think of that. We don't appreciate that there's a lot of effort being put to make those things safe. And same thing goes with hydrogen. Hydrogen goes boom. It likes going boom. But car manufacturers put all the effort they can to make this as safe as possible. And in a lot of cases, safer than eating your meal. You have more chances of choking yourself while eating rather than being killed by your car because it self-ignites.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fuel source.
No, this is a very good point. To be honest, I was thinking about bringing a safety question at the bottom of the discussion, but I think this is a perfect segue. And to support what Steve mentioned, that at least from my research, and I remember that back in India, they used to have these. We used to call it CNG, composite natural gas. So it's basically from the composition. They would have the gas created, and that used to be used as an alternative fuel for cars. The problem was it could only be fitted in like vans. It could not be fitted in smaller cars because unlike US, and probably the same thing is with Europe, you see the much smaller cars in size. So let's say if you have a smaller Volkswagen Passat or something like a similar, if you fit that CNG tank at the trunk, then you lose all the space. So generally, companies who used to do taxis and where they would not need to use too much of a backspace, they would retrofit those. But then again, there was always a safety concern. The technology was not advanced, at least I would say 20 years ago. and slowly it kind of died its own death. There weren't many people who adopted that technology because for whatever reason, less government support, and those kind of vans were mostly just shifting a topic a little bit. Those kind of vans were mostly used for all the criminal activities. So so if you end up having a van retrofitted with CNG tank, what used to happen that police would always stop you, because those were the vans always running around and kidnapping people. So it wasn't really electric vehicle or hydrogen topic, but I just thought about
Yeah,
throwing that in there.
yeah.
And so that perfectly has a segue into our safety concern, and then maybe we can also touch upon a little bit of an environmental concern from on these technologies. And what at least I have seen is this has been, I mean, of course, Elon Musk, a big proponent of battery technology, and he trashed Trevor Milton from Nikola and all the hydrogen supporters. But from his standpoint, it is the best technology out there. Is going to reduce the carbon footprint. And then how do you guys see it? Is it, what have you found in your research from an environmental standpoint?
Okay, right. From my point of view, if you just go back to the petrol stations, because obviously when we drive a car, the fear is that we don't want to crash and something to happen, a fire or whatever. But every time you fuel up your vehicle, you're exposed to all those gases. They're harmful from the diesel, whether it's diesel or petrol. So the idea that in the future we could have hydrogen, which is just water, then that's great, because it won't have any harmful effects when we're kind of fueling up our vehicles. So that's on that point. But if we go on to the batteries, the thing that I found really amazing in my research was I was always under the impression that the only time that the battery would be an issue with a fire would be if there was a crash. But obviously, I know Tesla and other companies all say how their batteries are so solid and strong and robust. But obviously, we now know that with fuels, within the actual battery itself, if you have a cell that's not working well, it can overheat, and then obviously all the flammable material around the battery just goes up. So that was something new for me. So that's what I'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly. You're correct, Steve, to what you said, especially about batteries. If they're not manufactured correctly, they could self-ignite. And actually, Hyundai had an issue with a lot of their battery packs, and they had to do a massive recall recently. When it comes to lithium-ion batteries, there is what's called dendrite formation, which basically on the lithium side of the battery. Exactly. That's one instance of Tesla that this happened. Basically, when you discharge a battery, there are small. I can't explain it, but there are formations of lithium going towards the other side of the battery, and if they go through the semi-permeable membrane, which is at the middle of the battery, and they go through it, then the battery can actually self ignite, like this article you're showing over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another safety concern. Now, when we go back to the environmental concern, I would say that both technologies are far better than internal combustion engine. However, at this moment in time that we're talking about, which is 2021, most of hydrogen is not produced via electrolysis of water. It's actually produced via natural gas. So there are processes that they are using natural gas, which is fossil fuel, to produce hydrogen, which is not the best. It's not green hydrogen, it's called gray hydrogen. Australia actually was using coal to produce hydrogen, which is
Wow.
completely bizarre. But hey, however, if we manage to produce hydrogen using renewables, then it's as green as anything. And also, when we're charging electric cars, yeah, no tailpipe emissions, great. But how are we producing the electricity that is
Correct.
charging this
Absolutely.
electric power?
Yeah.
Is it renewables? Is it hydroelectric, or is it burning coal or natural gas? Again, these are considerations that we need to have in mind. Also, the materials used at the moment, lithium-ion battery needs a lot of rare earth metals like
Yep.
cobalt, nickel. Lithium is not a very green endeavor to extract. Let's put it that way. It has its
Yeah.
environmental impact. Cobalt, there are ethical implications there about the conditions on the mines in Congo, where they use child labor to do that. Also, at this moment in time, we can't sugarcoat or greenwash it. Everything has an environmental impact. Waking up in the morning has a CO2 footprint. So, how are we extracting those rare earth metals? Are we using internal combustion engine diggers to do that? And again, we are talking about tailpipe emissions that are zero, yeah, but are we shifting the problem to the developing world at the moment? Are we just, again, like we do with our recycling, are we sending them to countries that are recycling them?
Yeah.
No.
It's a
Again,
end to end.
these are
Yeah.
things that we need to consider, and it's not that hydrogen fuel cells don't need expensive metals. They need platinum, which is expensive, and it's expensive for a reason. Again, these are all things that we need to consider. Also, how repairable are those things? There was a story recently where a guy driving a Model 3, I think, he hit a debris, and there was a small nozzle that actually was broken. I'll share these. I'll try to share this story. And that nozzle was eventually fixed by an independent garage
Wow.
for £700. Tesla wanted $16,000
Wow.
to do this repair, and the repair actually was this. See this nozzle? This thing broke, and basically it brings coolant into the batteries to cool them down so they don't overheat. Tesla wanted $16,000 because they said, "Oh, we can't fix just that. We need to replace the whole battery." So they would throw away a whole battery pack and put demand for a new battery pack, more resources to replace this, while this independent garage was able to fix it for $700.
Well,
So
they're definitely
we are
Apple of
talking.
the electric vehicles.
That's up to the consumer, though, to actually demand that the things that we are buying are easily repairable. Because okay, if it's still under warranty and something breaks under warranty, yeah, okay, it's fine. But once the warranty ends, you need to be able to go to any shop you want in order to repair that. And in order to do that, those standards need to be open for independent garages to be able to repair those cars and keep them on the road for longer.
Right.
Because if it becomes uneconomical for you to repair your green electric car or hydrogen car in the dealership anymore, you're going to throw it away and buy a new one. So you're going to put demand again for more resources to be mined and everything. Well, the greenest solution at the moment is keep a car for as long as you can, especially if it's a battery electric car.
And something to add to what Manos is saying, I saw another complaint from one of the Tesla owners was she had a small windshield crack. And when she took it to Tesla, I think what they were quoting was about $2,000.
Okay.
And that windshield, the entire windshield was replaced for 400 or 600, between 400 and $600. It was replaced, off Tesla. So we can definitely see that Tesla is charging a lot more for the repairs, and in Manos example, and this example I gave, and
yeah, it's not only Tesla though. I mean, okay, let's bash Tesla for this. Yes, and I will, honestly, I will. But the other problem is that a lot of car manufacturers, like Ford, General Motors, actually lobby against the right to repair movement, which is happening now in the US. They are throwing a lot of money actually lobbying against the right to repair. So they don't want people to be able to repair something that they own, because they want to instate this mentality that, yeah, you buy something that you can throw away.
Yeah.
That's not eco-friendly. That's not
That
green.
is not eco-friendly.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
No, it's
No. Right. So if we go back to the batteries again, I mean, I checked the figures, and the Chevy Bolt, 50,000 cars were recalled, and that was between 2017 and 2019.
yep.
So we know that about the Chevy. Obviously, older models of the Model S and Model X, that they've had similar problems. And Audi e-tron, they had some problems with their wiring as well. So obviously there's a lot of things happening in the battery section, which is wrong. The one thing that I researched was that Tesla, they've got 52 service centers in the UK. And what they say is that if your battery charge drops below 70%, they will actually replace it free of charge. So you get a new battery. And the other thing that they've been looking at, and I'm not sure how successful they have been with this, is that if you have an old battery, there's no reason why you can't use the old battery and take things out of the old battery and reuse them again in some way. So rather than going through the hassle of going all the way back to, the mines down in China or somewhere in the Republic of Congo or whatever, obviously you need those facilities, but this can sort of help with the batteries. I think that the thing with the Democratic Republic of Congo, where obviously they use child labor and there's all these things, these I think are government issues, and this is something governments have to sort of work on. But the one thing that I found, which was quite interesting, was that the cobalt that you get from China, all they do, a lot of it, they just refine, but that still comes from the Democratic Congo. So a lot of the times you think it's not that bad, but if you do a trail, you see it goes back to those countries like Argentina and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So there's a lot of stuff there, and it's not just that; it's the water issue as well, which is a problem. Because like you say, with the lithium and that, you're destroying the environment.
Absolutely. I think it's the end-to-end process, right? From a consumer standpoint, we look at the end product. We look at, okay, my car is not emitting any CO2. I'm leading the green revolution. But you're not looking at the entire process. You're looking at the final output in that process. There is input, there is processing, which goes on. And I think that's where, I think YouTube, and I'm going to actually, praise YouTube for a change, is that they have built a platform where creators like us and, other creators are bringing these kind of topics in the forefront. Like when you're investing, you should think about the end-to-end process and not just look at the final output. And as more and more people start switching from your traditional, I would say, entertainment to more educational entertainment, where they can search on platforms like YouTube, Twitch, etc., find topics like this. I think we need more education. We need more retail investors. We need more consumers to understand how the end-to-end process works. If you notice, and I'll kind of switch a gear a little bit here, if you notice, the top 10 companies in the world from a market cap standpoint are mostly B2C companies. Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and so on. You can go through, because why? You can see the end product. When it comes to enterprise companies, you don't see much, because retail investors can't see what's going on with enterprise, because that's behind the curtain. That's a different process, right? So that's the same logic applies here. And as more and more people get to know, okay, it's not just the battery, it's not just the hydrogen, how it is produced, where are the materials sourced from, what are the technologies being used to process that material to bring it to this final stage. I think that is where education and I would say is required for the end consumers.
Yeah, there is a whole supply chain behind each product that we are using. I mean, if you look at a car, there are thousands of suppliers behind there that are constantly supplying materials to car manufacturers. Some car manufacturers make more things than others. There are a lot of car manufacturers that are basically just assembling things at the moment, and they just slap their badge at the front. Obviously, they have done the whole design, but they have outsourced all production of pretty much everything. So there's a whole supply chain of companies that are only business to business, as you said. We don't know about them. Obviously, as investors, we should be educated about them because there's a lot of untapped potential there for investment. Like we say, yeah, we see Tesla, we see Lucid, we see Neo. Who is supplying those companies, though? These companies are going to benefit from that, and we need to be able to tap into that and educate ourselves. Say, okay, who is supplying all those connectors for Tesla? Who is supplying the thermal systems to Neo? Those are the companies that we should be investing as well. And if something goes wrong, we should be holding them as well accountable if they engage in dodgy practices, obviously.
Absolutely.
Can I raise a question? Because this is something I'm not sure about, but obviously you guys might be able to help me with this. Do you think that companies like Tesla, Lucid, Neo, Xpeng, they're at an advantage when it comes to electric cars? Because what they've basically done is they've started from scratch, they've built new factories, and whereas I get the impression that with other companies like VW, Mercedes, BMW, these guys are kind of like cobbling things together, and they're not quite, it's not the same. They haven't got the same mindset. They're not sort of working the same way in terms of focusing on the electric car. I don't know. Have you any comments on that?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think that they might have an advantage now. Because if you definitely want to buy an electric car, if you're set to buy an electric car at the moment, it's the companies you mentioned available, and from the traditional manufacturers, there are very limited options out there. Hyundai obviously has the Kona, Kia has the Niro, Nissan has the Leaf. Renault has the Zoe, which is a smaller city car. If you want to buy something which is a bit bigger, like a sedan type of or saloon type of size, yeah, you're kind of limited. You at this point, so at this moment in time, yes, you are right. They have an advantage. However, all those legacy car manufacturers, they have a lot of not potential. They do have all the knowledge, the engineering talent. They have the supply chain. They have the connections. They can leverage resources for R&D. They can, if they can make an electric car tomorrow. It's just they say that does it fit our business model? So it's more of a business decision. And obviously, they can't say, okay, I'm going full electric tomorrow. You have all those engineers. What are you going to do with them? They know how to build an engine. Let them still design engines, internal combustion engines, and I will slowly train them into electric powertrains. Volvo, for example, they've made their own spin-off company, Polestar, and they are making actual EVs. Ford is making electric versions of their normal cars, like the F-150, the Mustang, the E-Mac. Yeah. So they are doing it. They are doing it slowly. They do have and also bear in mind, they do have all the processes in place for quality control, manufacturing. They do have all those processes in place. A company like Tesla, is still learning. They do make great cars, but they're still learning. A company like Lucid is still learning. They started from scratch. They need to build all those engineering processes, put them in place, test them, revise them, test them again. While all those other companies, they have them in place. It will be easy for them to transition, and they will eventually.
Well, the reason I asked that question is if we go back to the beginning, and I said that Tesla produced and sold 500,000 electric cars, and VW only sold 230. And yet, you know, there's a lot of demand for Tesla cars. You know, people are waiting for them. And now, obviously, they've got the Berlin factory, which they're building, and then they've got the one in Texas. So economies of scale tell me that they're going to be making more cars and cheaper cars. And I just get a feeling that the legacy guys are just getting left behind.
Yeah,
And
but they have the factories in place.
yeah, but
Anyway, they don't have to build new factories.
yeah, but those factories are redundant factories because they're not designed to make electric cars. They're designed to make, you know, cars that are ICE cars.
No.
No.
So
Okay.
here's my
It's a lot of production. When we're talking about assembling a car,
Yeah.
you just need to make minor adjustments to the factory. You don't have to tear the factory down and build a new one. You have robotic assembly anyway in the vast majority of automakers anyway, so you just need to reprogram the robots.
Okay.
Done.
All right.
I think going back, Steve, what I want to give an example is today we consider these as legacy automakers, but if you take if you look at from a different perspective, not just that I am a Tesla investor, you have a startup company which is more agile, which is more nimble, so they can move faster. They cut down through all the red tapeism and everything. But when you take it and you look at a large scale company, you have processes, you have compliance, you have all these, because the number of employees are more, the business lines of businesses are more. It's just a larger organization, so it takes longer for an elephant to move versus a deer, right? So it's like that. Now when it comes to companies like Lucid, as Manos said, it's easy for them to, move around because they are smaller in size. But as they start scaling, because right now, I think one of the valuation issues which we are having a discussion now, that finally the Tesla, the electric vehicle, what is that enthusiasm has kind of, tapered off in the last 6 months or so, is because the scaling, right? Apart from Tesla, there's no other company which is even looking at manufacturing their own vehicles from start to end. So that I will give credit to Tesla, definitely. And just because we are running out of time, I'm going to switch quickly to our next topic here, and which is in continuation to what we are saying is, one of the examples from a sedan I could say is Honda's Clarity, which is being sold in the US. But they are discontinuing that in end of August. And they want to go completely electric, which was not going to come into the market, at least in the US, for next 3-4 years. So they are already behind these companies like Lucid, Neo, and Tesla. But their ICE vehicles are, perfect. There is no immediate plan to replace that. The same thing is going on with, I think, Ford, GM are putting way more emphasis on electrification than I have seen, at least from the Honda, the Japanese, car manufacturers. Toyota is there, but I think they're still dabbling between hydrogen and electrification, and I think it's different. How do you guys see it in Europe and in UK in particular?
Manos, you want to start?
Okay, a very quick point about what you said earlier about big companies being not so agile. I'll touch on Toyota, actually. Toyota has a system called Lean.
Yes.
So in their UK plant, they have a stock of 4 hours. So their suppliers are bringing in stock all the time, seats, dashboards, you name it, everything. And the stock that they have in inventory is 4 hours only. That's real lean and agile.
Yes.
So all those legacy manufacturers, they have all those processes in place.
Absolutely.
Companies like this are learning. So it's not that, it's a big company, it should be cumbersome to move around. Not so much. And especially if they smell money, they're very agile. There's profit there. Well, yeah.
I mean, you have 7 billion people in the world today, and probably the population is going to increase. Not everybody is going to buy Tesla. Not everybody is going to buy Lucid. There is market for Honda, Toyota, Audi, Mercedes, Volkswagen. Everybody will have a market share.
Yeah. Now I don't know why Toyota is dabbling between the two. You mentioned that, and I don't. I mean, they do have their hybrid range. They
Yeah.
do have their hydrogen vehicles. They. It's not like they didn't do anything electric, especially for the Tokyo Olympics. They did have a couple of electric buses. Uh, I think I don't know why they haven't released something electric yet. Even though they have released two versions of their hydrogen vehicle, the Mirai. Hyundai, on the other hand, is mostly electric for their cars, for their passenger vehicles, but they are looking into hydrogen for their trucks and lorries and or their heavier vehicles. So I think it's going to be a mix of the two for most manufacturers that make both passenger and heavier vehicles. It's going to be a mix of the two, both technologies, similar to what we have now with petrol and diesel.
Mm.
Different technologies for one is better than the other for different applications. I think it's going to be the same with battery versus hydrogen at the end.
So on that note, I actually want to share something very interesting again. I found this. I don't know how credible this website is, but it definitely has a lot more data. And you will be surprised actually that Europe is the number one, is the largest market now. It has taken over China. If you look at this data point over here, and Germany is the second largest country after China, who has the largest electric vehicle market.
Mm.
So this kind of stats, I mean, at least until I did the research over here, I was still under the assumption that China is, the largest, market in terms of the continent as well as the country. But that changes the fact, which makes now sense, that Europe is the second. And I personally think, and US is far behind. If you look at the numbers here, you have 137% growth in 2020, 12% in China, versus US is like far lagging behind, 4%.
Yeah, bear in mind though that in Europe we have smaller distances to travel.
Yes.
Uh, a lot of our traveling is within cities or not in a national motorway or highway. So electric vehicles are perfectly fine for that. So that's why we have the adoption rate.
Yeah.
In the US, probably because of the larger distances, people still want the range. So maybe that's why it's not adopted that much. Uh, and I do know that you guys over there like your big V8, V12 engines as well, which is not a thing here in Europe. I mean, a V6 engine is considered overkill. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's a gas guzzler. I don't
Yeah.
know how people actually have those, because it looks cool. If you're racing, it makes sense.
I think the other thing is that in Europe, and especially in the UK, fuel is a lot more expensive. I mean, we
Mm,
tax our fuel more, so
yeah.
so economically, it's probably easier to make the switch because of how expensive it is to run the car. And secondly, it's not just consumer demand, there's also government imposing restrictions. So for example, if you go to London, then if you have a diesel car, then you get charged extra for parking.
Yes.
If you and there's also sort of these different congestion charges, additional
Mm,
costs that are incurred on people that have older cars that emit more sort of CO2 and stuff like that.
mm.
So there's lots of things going on, more so than probably in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, since we are on that topic, let me ask the next question here is, from your standpoint, in US you have companies like Tesla, Lucid. Rivian is still hasn't produced a car, at least for the public. I know that Amazon has been using Rivians
Mm.
for their all their businesses. Lordstown, we'll touch upon that a little bit later. And then you have traditional car makers like GM, Ford, of course. From a Europe standpoint, I think the big companies are Volkswagen, Renault, Tesla is there. I just heard that NIO has their first delivery in Norway, so that
Yes.
is
Okay.
amazing. And then China, of course, you have NIO, Xpeng, Tesla, and
Mm.
then 150 other manufacturers. But from your standpoint, Steve Manos, give me your thoughts on which companies do you foresee in the next 10 to 20 years, let's say 10 years, in the next
Yeah.
decade, to become the top five companies. From your, what do you think are going to be the top five companies out of today's lot?
Well, if you're asking me, I would say that Tesla will be number one. I think Neo would be number two. Xpeng, because they've pinched some secrets of Tesla, will be number three. Okay, um, and um, and then Renault. I think Renault are doing a good job, and possibly Toyota. They're my main ones. Um, that's just my thoughts. Simply because they've entered the market sooner, and I think they're ahead. Whether people catch up with them, that's another matter. But for the moment, I think they're the runners. You know, the ones that are in front.
In my opinion, Tesla and one of the Neo, Xpeng, Lucid companies are going to be among the top five. However, I think that none of them are going to be on the top spot, because mainly the majority of cars that are sold at the moment are not in this category of cars. If I mean, a Tesla Model 3 is more comparable to BMW 3 Series, both in terms of cost, and the majority of people don't buy a BMW. Let's put it that way. So I think companies that will be able to make the smaller cars, the Ford Focus, the Kia Ceed, the Hyundai i30, the Volkswagen Golf, into an electric version and mass produce it and be able to sell it, those are going to be the top companies in the future, in my opinion. So if any of the legacy manufacturers manage to do that, then yeah, that they are going to be in the top, because obviously they do have the brand name recognition, they do have the customer service infrastructure in place, they do have the showrooms, they do have the service network, all of that. So they still can tap on all of this. So yeah, I do see Tesla, Lucid, Neo, companies like that, some of them being in the top five, but the top companies are going to be the companies that can actually provide a usable electric car, which is cheap to buy and replaces the current hatchback, which is what is mostly sold.
So let me throw a curveball here. What if Apple gets into this whole automotive business? And the reason I'm not thinking that Apple is going to make cars, but Apple can very well acquire, or another company which is already has the production line, manufacturing, supply chain, everything established, have established markets. What are your thoughts on the Apple entry into the electric vehicles?
Depends what they're going to deliver.
I personally think Apple needs to get in on it, because, quite frankly, the only thing that, and I've said this to you guys before, and maybe you don't agree with me, but apart from the iPhone, Apple have got nothing to show for themselves. They're just a one-trick pony. I know that they've got other things that they've kind of rebranded, and they've eaten up lots of little companies and stuff like that. But apart from the iPhone, what else is Apple got to offer? So I think they need something, and that could be the car.
Interesting. Okay, so I think let's switch gears a little bit here. Since we have spent quite a while in the passenger segment, which I know definitely will be the most popular among all of them. Quickly. What do you think if you're looking at investing into electric vehicles? Of course, you have options like Tesla, Lucid, Neo, Xpeng, because these are listed companies. And then, of course, on the traditional side, you have GM, Ford, Volkswagen. If you have $1,000 today, and this is going to be, I think, one of the most interesting questions, is from your perspective, if you have $1,000 or 1,000 British pound, which company would you invest in?
S&P 500. Safe.
Okay, all right, so let me clarify the question. I'm going to say no index fund investment, no ETF investment. We're talking about specific stocks.
Okay, fair enough. I would spread it equally. I would, and if I wanted to maximize return, I would choose one of the newer companies, because they have more, I would say, more room to grow. Let's say if I spend £1,000 and buy how many different shares from Lucid and Neo, and they grow up to the level that the Tesla stock is now, I'll make more money than if I buy £1,000 worth of Tesla stocks, and they double,
Mhm.
and they double their price at the moment, where they are now. So yeah, I would invest mostly on the new companies if I wanted to maximize my profits. But obviously, this brings risk.
Mhm.
Steve?
For me, it would have to be Xpeng, and the reason is because they're listed not just in the US, that they're also listed in Hong Kong. So what that means is that people in China can invest via Hong Kong. So you've got money coming from China, you've got money coming from Asia. So I think and obviously we know about the problems with China, and people are worried about what's going on with companies like Alibaba and other companies where they've sort of regulated them and caused panic. So it would have to be a Chinese company. It'd have to be Xpeng for me.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So just for the viewers, a disclaimer: none of us are financial advisors here,
Okay.
and we're talking about their own money, right? So if
Yeah.
Manos has 1,000, he's going to invest in everything. If Steve has $1,000 or Great British Pound, he's going to invest in Xpeng. I think I share a similar views as both of you. I think the newer companies have much more upside potential as opposed to Tesla, at least until Tesla starts moving and starts breaking its all-time highs. Right now, the price target is still about $1,000, which is still a great upside. But people who bought Tesla earlier in this year when it was trading at all-time high of 800 something, going to 1,000 is not going to give you that much of bang for a buck. Versus where if you invest in Neo or Xpeng and they double from current price, you'll definitely make more money. Okay, so I think we have talked a lot about the passenger car. So now let's shift gears to our second segment, and which is going to be our the heavy duty commercial vehicles, talking about trucks and lorries in UK. Interestingly, actually, lorry is also used in India as well, and some of those Asian countries as
Okay.
well. So that is so I'm familiar with that word. But I think the first question I'm going to ask to the group is, if the most memorable event, recent memorable event, was the Nikola scandal in the the fuel cell vehicle category. So let's start with that. What are your overall what are your thoughts about the overall situation, and how do you think with that kind of a scandal it impacts the overall adoption of the technology, the view of investors, and I'm talking about retail investors, not institutional investors, in investing in companies like this, which is more or less, I would say, still in the infancy stage and not really a wider adopted. So, Manos, let's start with you since you are the expert in this field. Let's start with your
Okay,
views.
I'm not an expert in the field, obviously. I'll
Disclaimer:
say that
Manos is not
again.
an expert.
Disclaimer. Disclaimer. Yeah, I think it didn't do a lot of good for the overall adoption of hydrogen. Let's put it that way. On the And I did see a video recently about the CEO of Nikola and his previous business endeavors, and there were a lot of allegedly sketchy dealings. So after seeing this video, it didn't come that much of a surprise, and they rolled the truck downhill to make it look like it's moving. uh, but looking at it from a purely engineering perspective, um, for last mile delivery like Amazon or something like Deliveroo or DoorDash in the US, something which is electric makes sense. For something that is regional within 200 miles, that again needs a lot of weight to be carried around, again something electric makes sense. For something that is that needs to start from California all the way to New York, or from the UK and reach the port of Piraeus down in Greece, uh, hydrogen makes far more sense. And the reason is weight. Now, there is a limit in the US. I think it's 35 tons for a heavy goods vehicle. I think here in Europe is 40 tons. I might be wrong. But if you want to increase range, you need to add more batteries to the vehicle itself. So at the end, you don't have a lot of weight left for goods. Hydrogen solves that issue. And obviously refueling is much easier and quicker with hydrogen rather than charging a powertrain that needs all this energy with batteries. And bear in mind that the chargers we know of that are in supermarkets, are installed in our houses, they won't cut it. You need more powerful chargers in order to do that. We're talking about chargers that have water cooled plugs, water cooled cables, because the power you're delivering is overheating those, and they would just melt. So there are issues there. So again, I think it's going to be a mix. But if you're talking about something that is going to cross countries or states, or start from Canada and end up in Mexico, uh, probably hydrogen is the answer. But if everything that's regional, if you start from, I don't know, one part of California going to the other end of California, yeah, again, battery will make more sense. Now, why Elon Musk bashed hydrogen? Well, he has a vested interest, obviously, into promoting his company, and CEOs will say anything to promote their company and keep investors happy, obviously.
Steve, what are your thoughts about starting with the Nicholas Canton?
Start with
and then
Nicola.
Yeah.
Well, that is incredible. I wish I could talk like that and get people to give me money. It'd be fantastic, but I'm not that good. But seriously, it's crazy how, I mean, this guy here, he had no product which he was able to bring to market. He just had like some sort of prototype. He put it in some kind of showroom, took some photos of it. But what he did, which was quite clever, was he surrounded himself with people that legitimized him, that took people took him seriously, because he was surrounded by people who were smart, clever people who should have known better. And then when, of course, he joined up with General Motors, that was incredible. He signed a deal with General Motors. He must be for real.
Yeah.
And people are sort of thinking to themselves, well, we can't afford Tesla shares, and look how cheap Nikola shares are. We need to get some Nikola. Let's get in there quickly. So obviously not a wise decision, and obviously Hindenburg Research sort of figured it out and exposed him for being a fraud.
Nora says she made money. Well done, Nora.
Oh, good for you, but not fraudulently, I hope.
Oh my goodness.
So sorry.
No, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Okay, so getting back to the hydrogen electric trucks, a couple of interesting factors. I mean, of course, those batteries are very heavy, and obviously that hydrogen makes it more sort of better in terms of traveling. But I suspect that as we speak, there's people in Tesla that are trying to reduce the weight of those batteries. And it's, if you can't reduce the weight of the battery, then there are other things that you can reduce the weight of around the vehicle. So, there might be something there. The other thing I'm not sure about is obviously we know drivers, if they're on long distances, they have to sleep. They have to load up. They have to take things off the vehicle. While this is happening, surely the trucks can be charged up. So that's something to consider. But
yeah, it's sorry to interrupt. It's just that we're talking about so much space taking that the batteries take, that from a 35-ton lorry, we're talking about less than 10 tons left for cargo.
Right.
We're talking about these types of figures at the moment. So yeah,
I understand. What's your thought about? There's a phrase, I can't remember it. Do you know when you get a convoy of vehicles going together? So the idea would be, and this is something Tesla have always kind of shown and discussed, is what you'd have maybe 6 or 7 trucks in a row driving. There would only be one driver, and he would be at the front, and the other ones would be self-driving, and they'd be running behind. And obviously the drag would be less because of the one in front. So again, it's not solving the problem. I know hydrogen is still going to be sort of more cost effective, but it's just a creative idea, that could possibly work for shorter journeys, maybe.
Potentially. I haven't looked at this technology, to be honest, but it could potentially work. Uh,
Yeah.
I
Interesting.
can't see why not.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, yes, Nicola did make some bold claims that
Oh, sure, for
they
sure.
had a working prototype and they didn't.
Yeah.
Tesla, on the other hand, uh, sh- showed us the semi on 2017. They said deliveries in 2019
Yeah.
and
So
nothing
there's
yet.
yeah, so obviously something going on, but
Yeah, plus their chief executive that was not
it's
chief
left.
executive, the executive that was running the project left. So
Sure.
there is something going on there.
There
Well,
you go. Yeah.
the only thing I would say to that, I'm not sticking up for Elon Musk here, but I think he was with the company for about 10 years. It was only in that particular position that he was for a few months. Um, but long term, I mean, these trucks, I mean, I know for shorter journeys, I think they do make sense. And I know that Walmart have ordered 130, UPS have got 125, and Pepsi have got 100 of these vehicles on order. So, like you say, for shorter journeys, probably work, but for longer journeys, obviously hydrogen.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think since we are talking about we moved forward to the Tesla. They actually did mention in the most recent report that the drive axle production line is ready, and the general assembly line is going through its final debugging before starting production. And this is basically the last step before they start producing these semi trucks. So that's a great sign. At least finally Tesla will be coming out with a semi. Going back to the Nikola scandal, this is for all the investors, right? I think what happened was the FOMO. FOMO gripped everybody, and I am part of that. Of that, group of investors who said, "Oh, I missed my gains. I did not actually miss my gains on Tesla. I missed selling early." Uh, uh, but I think what we learned from that, and this is something all retail investors should take into account. Manos pointed something very nicely. He said, "Don't just listen to the CEO, because CEO will always say good things about the company. And if you have worked in a corporate culture, you can probably relate to what we are saying, is because what today's age is all about social media. So how much you can hype something. And I'm not saying that I'm against Elon Musk. He's great. He's really a visionary. You don't get people, you have only generational companies. I consider Tesla as a generational company. Those don't come often. But not every company can be in that, right? So if you already have somebody here, you will not going to have every other CEO become a generational, iconic, legendary CEO that is going to change the world. So in that respect, I think a lot of us investors, retail investors, got suckered into, I missed my gains on Tesla, let me quickly get into Nikola so that I can make a quick buck and make that. That is something we should all keep in mind. Nikola taught us a very good lesson on things like these, and also touching upon the Lordstown motor. Um, it, it has to go to, unfortunately, we as YouTubers, who are talking about finances, are also to be blamed to certain extent, because there were a lot of channels that were hyping the Lordstown motor. They were hyping Workhorse without seeing that there is really something substantial within the company. And that's where retail investors should be very, very careful.
Yeah.
Thought-
Uh, Now with the electric cars being talk of the town, let's say, it's easy to get suckered in, as you said, either to a Nikola company, or if we go back a few years, companies like Theranos, or
yes,
which was, yeah, that
yes.
was
That was
that was red flags everywhere. And I'm not a doctor, and I was thinking, how
they were
does
making a
that
movie
work?
on her. They are planning to make
Yeah.
a movie. Yeah.
And also big companies like Enron, they were creative with their accountants as well and their books. So yeah, you can't really trust everything a CEO says at face value. You need to obviously do your own research, and in many cases the CEO is a finance guy. He's a guy that does numbers. But if we're talking about engineering or science, try to find some sources outside of this company that are having a critical look into those companies. Find some contrarian views and listen to both sides of the argument. And you have to make your own opinion at the end. And Well, at the end, yeah. Uh, you'll
So we have
see.
a,
You might be end up holding the bag, or you might get rich.
so we have
No
a
one
question
knows.
from Nora here. She's saying, "What are your thoughts on Lucid?" So who wants to take this first?
I unfortunately haven't done any research on Lucid, so I'm going to pass it on to Manos. I'm sorry, Nora.
The only thing I can say is that I have a couple of shares of CCIV, and I was gutted that I wasn't able to vote because our brokers don't give us voting rights here in the UK, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I bought the stock as I said before because I see a lot of upside in this company, a lot of room to grow. So yeah, I don't think it's a Lordstown Motors type of company. So yeah, I think it's a good investment, but as always, as people say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify, uh, do the research, look at the fundamentals, look at the financials. Obviously, it's a new company; they're not generating any profit at the moment. It's a long-term investment, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
From my standpoint, Nora, I think I would because I do both options trading as well as I invest for long term. I am still on the fence about Lucid, at least until the car starts rolling out, because if you look at the stock price from some time now, it's been between that 20 and 25, $26 range. um, Instead of thinking that it will double in the next year or so, and it might as well completely, I would love to keep doing options and keep taking my profit out of that company. And that's how I'm doing it. Not necessarily it's for everybody. If you're not into options trading or day trading, I don't think that strategy should be used. For people who want to completely invest, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think spreading your investments across, Tesla is still, I would recommend, if you are completely new to electric vehicles, you should start with Tesla. There is definitely more upside in Neo X Bank, but here's the problem with Chinese companies. We outside of China don't get all the news at the right point in time. You are too late. By the time you get to know when it publishes on CNBC, New York Times, or whatever your country newspaper is, it's already late. They are already out of the investment, right? Like Neo is selling 1.5 million shares, all the internal shareholders. That brought the price down of Neo, but that was not the only news. The other piece of news was that Chinese government was doing a lockdown on, because of the population increasing and the cost of living is increasing. What they were doing is like, okay, now we are going to have the teachers will not have summer vacations and winter vacations. They will be staying in school, and when and the parents can leave the kids at school, which means that all the other companies which were doing these summer programs and all those, they are going to get impacted. Now that news never came out. I just happened to know somebody who knew this because they were because they have their own channels of communication. They know, but that was one of the reasons why the stock market got hit recently in
Hmm.
China. So that is something to be aware of. We
Okay.
have another question here from Donna. She said, "Saw Branson flight here and thought I would see the type of investing you do and who for no less than dollar types. If you don't mind me being nosy." Not at all, Donna. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And Nora says, "Thanks. I have a small position, nothing crazy." Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm not holding any Chinese stocks except for one of my small penny stocks. I don't know, Nora. That is even more riskier than holding Neo and Xpeng.
Mm.
Okay, now talking about electric cars and what are the companies you could actually be investing in terms of supply chain. Uh, there are companies that are actually supplying the big boys. One of them is Aptiv. They do all the wiring and the connectors because we're talking about special stuff that are expensive. It's not the wiring that you have in your normal internal combustion engine car. Is special wiring, high voltage stuff. And the other one is T Connectivity. They also provide a lot of connectors to uh, both the legacy and the new manufacturers. Aptiv actually estimated that an electric vehicle is using about $1,000 worth of their components. Uh, so That's a good chunk of money. So is what we were saying earlier, that companies that are supplying the car manufacturers are standing to benefit from that as well.
That is true. That is true. Perfect. So I think that takes us to the next segment of the question, and we kind of discussed this a little bit briefly during our passenger segment. But Manos, you definitely mentioned that the weight plays a major role, when it comes to the fleet customers, and as we understand that the battery is one of the heaviest components, could be in a vehicle, especially when it comes to the heavy duty vehicles. How do you really see this shaping up? Do you think the hydrogen will eventually become the winner? And I'm talking about, let's say, a decade out, not in the next few
Uh,
years, compared to the battery electric vehicles.
uh, it really depends on the application. I think for cars, it's not going to become the winner. Batteries will always be the dominant player when it comes to passenger cars. Hydrogen will fill a small niche, as I said, in cars that need to be running 24/7, which have multiple drivers, like a fleet of taxis or uh, something like that, or for people that don't have easy access to chargers, like densely populated cities. Hydrogen can be a solution, or for people that are doing really long miles. Uh, Hydrogen again can be a solution for them, but batteries will be, I think, 80 to 90% when it comes to passenger vehicles. When it comes to goods transport, I think it's going to be a 50-50 split.
I
Uh,
see.
Probably more towards batteries, because long haul transport is not, it could be done by hydrogen in a larger scale, but as you said, with weight, it's an issue. It's not just initial weight. It's just that as the battery charge level goes lower, as the battery charge gets depleted, the weight doesn't change. It stays the same.
No.
However, as you are burning through hydrogen, the car gets lighter. So you don't carry around dead weight in terms of your fuel source. Obviously, you're carrying around the tanks and the powertrain and all that, but you're not carrying around an empty battery
Mhm.
that is dragging you back, and you need to spend energy to carry around something that's not giving out energy anymore.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
I think the same, really. I think that in terms of batteries, electric batteries for cars, that will carry on. Um, I mean, it's just the cost at the minute. Hydrogen is just so much more expensive to
Mm,
make, to process. If you went to your petrol station, your gas station now, and you wanted to load up with some hydrogen, it costs you just as much as it probably costs you for fuel or diesel, or even more. So
yes.
until those costs come down, I can't see it changing. But one thing that you mentioned, Kay, which might be interesting, is I don't know. Maybe some countries might adopt at a later date might adopt hydrogen more than other countries, because for I don't know, maybe lots of different reasons. I don't know, but at least for the moment, I think electric batteries are here to stay.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with both of your sentiments here. And as an investors, I think we should realize that it is not just about US, and it's not just about China. It is not just about Europe. There are many countries in the world, and every market will have a different kind of an approach
Mm,
depending upon their conditions, their infrastructure. And I can give an example. For example, Tesla is having a hard time in India for many reasons, and this is going to be one of my topics. I'm going to make a video on sometime down the month or so. The reason is there's no infrastructure. The infrastructure lags so much behind China and even some of other smaller countries, that just having a car and refueling it and having it run on a road is a challenge. Forget about having electric cars over there. Oh, we have a question here from
mm.
Donna. What would be the possibility hydrogen being more explosive? I think, Manos, I think this question I want you to kind of take it, and then we'll
Uh,
move on.
Donna, thanks for the question. We answered that before, actually, and what we said is that if you're trying to move a lump of metal, which is a car, you need energy, and this energy is stored somewhere. And at this moment in time, we have a flammable liquid in our tank, which is running underneath our feet into an engine, and it literally explodes in that engine, and that drives us forward. Same with batteries. We have an enormous amount of energy stored in a battery, and this battery drives an electric car forward. And again, this if the battery fails, the battery can self combust, it can self ignite. Same with hydrogen. It's yes, it goes boom, but the technology for storing it, the tanks have become better, and obviously car manufacturers are, I, at least someone would hope, but from personal experience, I know that they are taking all the necessary steps to make it safe. Now, we don't really think about it when we are driving our normal internal combustion engine car because we grew up with it. We grew up with it. We learned that it's safe. We know that it's safe. It's not gonna burn us. It just just when we're driving to work, it's not gonna combust. So we think it's safe. However, if you look at the energy density and the actual numbers, I mean, I'm having the numbers here. If we're talking about gasoline or petrol, we're talking about 34.2 megajoules of energy per liter of fuel. Diesel is 38.6 megajoules per liter. Hydrogen is 8.5 if we're talking about liquid, or 4.5 if we're talking about gas. Batteries are actually 1.7 to 2.8 megajoules per liter. So that's a lot of energy stored. And under the right conditions, any of those can go boom. And that's the whole point. So is it more explosive? Yes. Uh, so is petrol. And that's how it actually drives a car forward, by exploding in a cylinder. So, but that's what us engineers do. We make it safe for everyone to use. And yeah, if your cell phone battery explodes, it can give you serious burns. And just find videos on YouTube, phones exploding. It happens. But we think it's safe, and it's never going to happen to us. But
Can I
whenever you store energy in a small package, yeah, that's it. What do you expect to happen? It's physics.
yeah, can I just add to that as well that obviously now that we're getting more electric cars and we're finding that batteries are exploding or they're set on fire because the fuel cell's not good and it causes a problem. So we're learning from that, and that's
Yeah.
becoming obviously something that we're learning about. So it'll be interesting to see as more and more vehicles or trucks come online that actually have hydrogen fuel cells. We'll see this unproven technology.
Yeah,
See
definitely.
how that happens, and there might be problems, but yeah, it'll be very interesting. And that was a very good question.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Nora. Yeah, I mean, definitely, we have safety concerns, and I think Tesla and these companies, they get a little bit more screen time about the safety because accidents happen all the time. You see cars, not electric, so the ice cars, getting into
Yes.
accidents and burning,
Mhm.
but it's not a news. It's just we are regular. So this sorry came in late, true, and they will all use piston system. Absolutely. Uh, will hydrogen use
Uh,
piston systems?
no, hydrogen is basically you're combining hydrogen with oxygen, and during this process, you are creating electricity. The byproduct is water, and this electricity is driving the car. Now, there has been research on making internal combustion engines with hydrogen. Now, it does have the advantage that we know as a species, let's say, how to make internal combustion engines. Uh, but there are downsides. Obviously, you still have CO2 production uh, because you will still need lubricating oil, which again, some of it is being burned into the combustion chamber. So you are producing CO2. Also, because of the temperatures involved, you are producing nitrogen oxide, which is a greenhouse gas. So it's not the best application for hydrogen. We're talking about hydrogen fuel cell technology at the moment, which is combining hydrogen with oxygen, creating electricity out of it, and that electricity is driving the vehicle forward. The byproduct is just water.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you, Manas. So this is great. So the last question in this segment before we jump onto the next segment is the for investors like us, the retail investors, what are some of the companies that, we can invest in to gain advantage into the heavy duty? And I'll start with Steve over here.
Well, if by that question you mean
Not
because
Nicola.
not Nicola, no, that's for sure. I would be looking at Manos mentioned all these companies that produce things like the wiring and all that for the vehicles. What I've been investing, and I've been trying to rack my brain so that I could give you the names of these companies, but I don't have them at hand.
Okay.
But I'd be looking at investing in sort of companies that produce sort of lithium, cobalt, because obviously these are things that we need for electric cars. And if you have a mine, if you were to say to somebody tomorrow, look, we've found a plot of land, and there's cobalt or there's lithium underground. Can we can we get it out of the ground? It'd probably take about 10 years. So all we can do at the moment is invest in companies that are actually sort of making it or are on the process of sort of excavating or getting this out of the ground. So I'd be looking at sort of companies that producing lithium or cobalt.
Great. How about you, Manas? Are you investing in any of these ancillary businesses?
Yeah, I do have a really small position with both the companies I mentioned earlier, TE Connectivity and Aptiv, mainly because they are suppliers of essential components for the production of electric cars at the moment. I am also looking at companies that are producing hydrogen gas, like Linde and Air Liquide. I am looking at companies that are producing hydrogen fuel cells like XP Power. There is a hydrogen ETF that I have one share of. But weirdly enough, it has a position in Tesla, sorry, not Tesla, Nikola, which I'm not very sure about, but hey. And obviously EV companies, and as Steve mentioned, companies that are producing materials for these kind of things, because we need the materials, we need the raw materials in order to actually make the electric cars themselves. And there are also companies that you probably don't think that they are in the EV space, like Nvidia. Yes, they
Chips, absolutely.
they make computer parts, but they also make parts for the automotive industry.
Nora says Nikola is up 19% in the past 3 months. Well, that's stock market for you right there. I don't have any personal investment in any of the ancillary business, but yes, I am invested in AMD, which also makes which is supplying chips to Tesla and many other EV car companies. But Manos, we'll be very interested in looking forward to your videos on these particular hydrogen companies. Whenever you decide to make it, that way we can look
I
into
need to find time to make that.
All right, cool. So any final thoughts on this segment before we jump into our third segment?
Well, I'd just like to add that I've got AMD, and I think I can say that after watching your video about AMD, it's confirmed that I made a good decision, even though you're not a financial advisor.
Okay. Yes, I'm not a financial advisor. None of us are financial advisors. And Nora, it's great you have Nvidia because I just could not afford Nvidia, in a public portfolio. All right. Okay, moving on to our third segment. And this we're going to talk about the airplane, the aviation. And I think this is going to be very exciting because we look at the passenger car, we looked at the heavy duty trucks and lorries. Now we want to look at, the intercontinental travel. If we are going to do it, are planes going to be the next frontier? So there are, from my research at least, there are many small airplanes, which are flying very short distances, are coming out as electric planes, because let's say you are renting a small small plane for 2-seater plane, flying for 5 hours and coming back. It's electric. But I would be really interested to know is how the large planes, like Boeing 737 and those big planes which are doing intercontinental travels, how are they looking at electrification? And what are your thoughts? Let's open that discussion from here, and then we'll take it further.
Can I say something first?
Go
Because
ahead. Yeah, go
unfortunately,
ahead, Steve.
I don't have much to say, so I may as well share it with you now.
Mm.
From what I gather, with the large planes, what they're looking at is still using the fuel that they're using, but once they get to a certain height within within the atmosphere, whatever that is, then they can switch off and somehow they can coast or then use the electric. Am I right in thinking that that was something I'm sure I came across?
I'm not familiar with that.
Hmm.
In terms of going up to a speed and then using and then coasting,
Yeah.
we're talking about supersonic, hypersonic actually flight with ramjet technology, which up
Okay.
to you need to have some sort of propulsion up to a point,
Sure.
and then you reach up to a point where you can the incoming air
Hmm.
actually compresses enough that you can actually have combustion with it. But uh, again, we're talking about supersonic and
Sure.
hypersonic flight on
Okay.
passenger planes, which is
Yeah.
again something we
Hmm.
we don't have at the moment
No.
after the Concorde was retired.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, when it comes to, as you rightly said, Kay, for smaller uh, planes and helicopters, again, batteries are probably the way to go. It's it's not a huge increase in weight. Again, if we look at a small Cessna type airplane, the range is not comparable when it comes to aviation fuel, kerosene. Kerosene is it gives you more range, but again, it depends on the use case. So for small flights, again, battery is going to be king, I think. But when it comes to bigger planes, uh, again, I think hydrogen again has an advantage, especially when we're talking about a smaller plane like a 737 or an Airbus A320, I
I think
think
so. Yeah,
is a
yeah, yeah.
smaller. Yeah,
Mhm.
those are those are buses, literal buses. They need to be in the air, on the air all the time. So uh, getting up in the air, landing, refueling with hydrogen, and then getting back up in the air is it makes more sense. Also, bear in mind that the weight of the batteries, if we're talking about fully electrifying a plane like this, that will put a huge strain on the landing gear. So you need stronger landing gear. You will need also more lifting capacity from the wings. So you will need larger wings. Uh, Again, there are issues there. Now, Airbus is actually betting towards hydrogen. Um, Again, there are issues with infrastructure. One more thing, Boeing said that we don't see any of that happening, but uh, yeah, Boeing is kind of in its own sort of trouble at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah. Uh, Rolls-Royce, on the other hand, which is an aircraft engine manufacturer, has invested in electric propulsion, and they recently hired 300 people in their new division here in the UK to actually develop electric propulsion. But what they have showcased so far are small planes and helicopters. They haven't showcased anything large like a plane that will do a transatlantic flight. And to be fair, what Airbus has shown is mostly, yeah, exactly that. Uh, what Airbus has shown is more like an A320 sized plane
Hmm.
rather than something like a bigger seven, like a Boeing 777 sized plane. Um, but I guess small steps.
Hmm.
Yeah, let me see. I found the Airbus example for our audience.
Mm.
Let me show. This is the
And they've
Airbus.
also shown, yeah. So this is similar to an A320 Neo, which is an extended version of the A320. The other one's a turboprop, which is a more like within a country type of flights. The other one is a concept, which okay, concepts.
Mm.
Yeah,
You never know if they're going to be a reality.
yeah. I think so. Based on what we are hearing, at least the shorter duration flights, I think that probably will be the next revolution, where those smaller planes which can be converted to move away from your traditional fuels to either hydrogen or electric. And I know that Boeing has had its own share of I guess bad luck with the 737 controversy, of course, happening. But there was actually a new controversy with Boeing, and it's not talked about much, but they did have a lawsuit. So they had a tie up with this startup company. It was called let me see the name. It was called Zunum Aero, and they were a very popular back in 2018. They were flying high. They had the Boeing was one of the biggest investors in this company to electrify. Then what happened was they ran out of cash, and they blamed Boeing by saying that Boeing was colluding with the other key aerospace, manufacturers and funders to sabotage its efforts to raise additional cash and trying to poach the Zunum engineers. So what was happening is, while Zunum was,
Wow.
building a prototype of the electric plane, and the people who were, part of the project, I would say, from Boeing, they were taking all the secrets out. This is what Zunum is, alleging, and they were building their own prototype exactly match to match. And Boeing was, making some, lobbying against, giving more funding to this company. It went bankrupt. They have filed a lawsuit. It was not a big news. Nobody covered it. But I think because of this topic, I was looking into Boeing. But since I think the 737 disaster, Boeing has been,
Mhm.
has had its own share of troubles.
Yeah, they had an issue with I think the 777. Now they found some structural issues in the planes that
Wow.
they have like 100 planes that were ready to be delivered, and they need to check every single one of them again.
So
Yeah,
as a
not
as an
not doing great.
investor, let me ask this question. I think aviation is very interesting. So as an investor, if you want to invest, and we are not just looking at from hydrogen and electric, which companies would you be investing or interested in investing in aviation?
I think for me, it'd probably be Rolls-Royce at the moment. That would be the only one, only because that it's one that's in the UK and something I'm a bit more familiar with. That would be it for me.
Rolls Royce definitely for me as well. Their share price is quite low, even though that's not a reason to buy a share, obviously. But it's the barrier to entry is quite low. So, and I do see a lot of upside to Rolls Royce. I would invest in Airbus if I could, and I wouldn't invest in Boeing at the moment, not because of them saying, "Oh, we're not looking at electrification or hydrogen," but mainly because they have other issues that are systemic issues within Boeing at the moment that they need to solve. Uh, I would be looking at the smaller players like Embraer, Bombardier, companies like that, because if they see uh, a gap in the market and Boeing is still trying to solve its own internal issues, they might pounce and actually grab a huge chunk of the market with that, and they might they might have a good upside. So those are other companies that I'm looking at.
Great. Again, as a friendly reminder to all our viewers, again, these are
Yeah,
not. This is not a financial advice, guys. Just remember
yeah.
that. These are the companies which we think that are have a potential as an investor, but it's highly recommended if you are looking into these companies. definitely do your due diligence. Look at their reports, financial reports. Here, go to their earnings call. Try to find some good sources of materials. And as Manos and Steve mentioned in previously, try to find a contrarian view of not just in the support of the company but also against the company, because that will give you a holistic picture of any company. And there are some YouTube channels which are very supportive of Tesla, and then there are some channels which are against Tesla. So it's always fun to hear what both views tell you, and then make your decision as a prudent investor. And that's what I would say. Okay. All right. So I think so. So we covered plane. We understand. Plane, I think, is still in the airplane sector is still a little bit far away from whether going electric or hydrogen, and we won't know. I think passenger cars and your heavy duty are the next frontier. I would say are the most likely to be converted into the new technology. So why don't we actually kind of shift gears, because we still have some time left, and talk about the future of ICE. And how do you see that changing or completely getting shut down? At least in the first, let's talk about the developed countries like US and UK and Europe, and then we'll switch to the developing countries, because I think that is a longer endeavor compared to US and UK.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier on, in the UK, we've got laws coming in, basically because of obviously the Paris Climate Agreement, and obviously we're wanting to sort of reduce these emissions. So, 2030 is the date for us in the UK, where you won't be able to buy a diesel or a petrol car, and already we're seeing sort of different charges sort of kicking in. Like if you go to London, there's the congestion charge. Older vehicles, when you take your car in for servicing, for what we have, what's called an MOT, every year we have to have our vehicles checked. If the exhaust doesn't, match the criteria in terms of air pollution and that, you can't drive that car. So these things are slowly happening, and whether we like it or not, we're moving away from ICE cars. But I think the thing is, obviously, these ICE companies, they've got a lot of cars that they need to shift, they need to sell. 2030, they can still keep making them, and the thing that I find most interesting is when I see the BMW adverts, they're always talking about the interior of the car. They're not talking about much else. It's a nice, sexy car. It's the interior is brilliant. Buy this car. So even the marketing is changing, and they're staying away from obviously the things that we need to be talking about, which is moving over to electric. So it's going to change, and in the UK, obviously, we've got the government supporting it with grants and things for electric cars.
Manos, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for new cars, obviously, I think we will, at least in the West, move away from internal combustion engines. There will be, we also have to bear in mind, however, that, governments may say whatever they want to keep voters happy and get reelected. But if the infrastructure is not there by 2030, I can see this date being pushed back. Because that's it. You can't say at 2030 or 2035, okay, I'm not selling any more electric cars, and you don't have charge infrastructure for everybody else to charge their cars. I mean, what are you going to do? Just bar people from going to work? It's not going to happen. So as long as infrastructure development happens and is in place, then yes, I think we will meet those dates and we will go away from internal combustion engines. We have to bear in mind, however, that there is a huge sector that is mostly exempt from emissions regulations and all that, the military. Now, I don't know if they will continue using internal combustion engines, mainly for all the extended range and all that inventory that they have as well. We're talking about main battle tanks, auxiliary vehicles, a lot of stuff. And then we need to look at developing countries. Now, there is the case of existing car manufacturers producing vehicles that we never see in the West that are cheaply made for developing countries. Uh, because there are no safety regulations, no emissions regulations there. A lot of countries buy used cars from the West anyway, and they use them. They happily use them for many years until they can't repair them anymore. And that could also be the case. It could be the case that startups in those countries actually buy the tooling of manufacturers, established car manufacturers, and continue making versions of cars we know of today, like a Honda Civic, uh, well into the 2050s. So just because they don't have the charging infrastructure, and how are they going to support their growing economy? So
Absolutely.
these are things that we need to also bear in mind. There could be also cases where governments give special dispensation, sorry, in areas where you can't really have a charging point or access to hydrogen, like I can think of in the middle of the Australian outback, for example. Uh, or you may still have internal combustion engines for small generators, just to give you some power when you need it. But
Absolutely.
for the future of transportation, no, I think we will move, at least in the West, we will move away from internal combustion engines
Yeah,
eventually.
absolutely. And as again, great point, Steve Manos. And again, we want to talk about, from a retail investor standpoint, is when you hear these statements out from CEOs, and I'm not going to name anybody, but we know who we're talking about. uh, you have to think about, traditional car manufacturers are not finished. These are statements, oh, we're going to kill all these traditional car manufacturers and Tesla is going to rule the world. You have to understand, a Western country, which is a developed country, is very different from a developing country. So if you come from a developing country, you understand it is not as easy as you think. People don't have enough money to afford food. How are they going to buy electric car, right? And that's why cars are built specifically cheaply to support that. Now, if you're thinking, and I personally think there may be future mergers between a lot more companies to bring scale to their technology. But it's not that every other company is going to shut down, and it's not a zero sum game. There will be markets where you'll have specific leaders. And Tesla, I still think Tesla is going to be, my personal opinion, is going to be at the very top, or at least in the top three, if not more, if not better. But there will be, GM, Ford, they are not out of the game yet, because as the West moves to electrification, it's going to give them the capital, the money, the resources to invest more into electrification. And that's when they'll lower the price of the cars, and to a point where they can sell those cars and build infrastructure while being in the developing countries. Because that's a different ball game altogether. That's really scale. In US, how many car, you have a population of 330 million, right? So even if we say 2 cars per household, you are only 600, 700 million cars you're selling. That's, of course, if you take 2 cars, right? Now you go to China, population of 1.4 billion, and then India has a population of another 1.3 billion. That's 1/3 of the world's population living in those two countries. So that's a huge market. China, completely electrified. Hopefully by 2030, 2050, that's the range they are giving. But India will not be in that. So you still have a big market for ICE vehicles, which I still think is going to be the case. And similarly, for all the Southern Asian countries, you have a lot more Middle Eastern countries, which are, again, plagued with a lot of war and instability in the government. And you have South America, you have the entire continent of Africa. That's a lot of potential. I don't think 10 years is enough to electrify the entire world.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say, there'll be a lot of young people that will be very happy, because as we get closer to the year 2030, a lot of these fancy cars will start dropping in price, and these kids will be buying them, and having fun.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I'm personally very positive about Volkswagen. They are definitely at the forefront. I'm very surprised with Toyota and Honda though on why they are taking that long, because from a at least in the US, and if Nora is still with us, maybe she can also confirm that the Japanese cars, of course, are very very popular, especially in the East Coast side. And the reason is because of their resale value. The cars, they run 100,000 miles with barely much problems. Whereas if you look at the GM and the Ford vehicles, for all the fans, unfortunately, it's a hassle, right? That car takes a lot of maintenance. The resale value drops right, quickly. But if you have a Toyota, Honda, or Nissan, at least in the East Coast side, in the New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Boston, this entire area, the resale value is amazing for these cars. And of course, once Tesla, starts pumping out those many cars, we'll probably see more.
Well, maybe that's one of the reasons why they didn't switch to electrics anymore, because there's still demand,
That is.
especially from US customers, as you showed before, that the adoption rate is something like
Yeah, it's only 2%.
is
Let me see if I
small.
can pull
Yeah.
that up quickly.
Shocking.
So maybe that's why they're saying, well, our biggest market doesn't want electric cars. So why should we bother?
Yeah, this is the volume report we found. And if you can see here, it's only 4%, the growth. Versus you look at Europe and China, I think they are growing much faster.
Yeah, and also Japan. If you look at Japan,
Oh
because
my
we
goodness.
talked about Japanese manufacturers, we have a negative rate there.
Oh dear.
It's
So they're looking at that and saying, yeah, why would we bother?
I think
They don't have the pressure on them. Volkswagen has a pressure on them.
yes.
BMW have a pressure on them. Mercedes have a pressure on them from their home market. So of course they're gonna do that. Of course they're gonna invest in EVs.
Of course, I think West is going to lead. West, I think in China and Europe, and I think Europe and China are going to be the real drivers of this technology. Personally, I think, and that's why I guess Volkswagen becomes very lucrative from an investment standpoint. Of course, Neo, Xpeng are very lucrative. Tesla being in all over the place. You have China factories in China, Berlin, Austin, California. We shouldn't forget that. So that's amazing. I know we are almost coming to an end of our live chat. So here's the final question. What are your final thoughts on entire if you are an investor, let's say, if you're an investor, we already talked about your $1,000 investment and thousand, but what are the tips you will give to investors who are just coming, learning about electric vehicles, or how should they navigate themselves in whether they should go ETF route, index fund, or buying these specific stocks? Let's start with that question, and if there are any questions in the chat, we'll tackle that as well.
Well, if I start first, I only invest in shares, so I'm going to have to leave that answer for the other guys. So I look at my shares, and at the moment, I can see that the shares that I'm investing in are the electric cars. I'm investing in materials that are used for batteries. Okay, and I'm investing in like AMD chips and semiconductors and things like that. So it's all tech stuff. Some of it obviously, takes longer. And I know that on the stock market, tech sometimes get hammering, but that's where I'm at. Growth stocks and tech stocks.
Anos?
I would say that if you're new, what you need to do obviously is you need to learn how to read the financials of a company, how to read a quarterly report, learn how to find analyst reports, learn how to read the chart, make an investment horizon for you. Are you investing for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? What are you doing? And why? What do you want to achieve? Then understand what you're investing into. Yes, you hear all the hype about company A or company B. That's fine. Is it all hype though? Is it what's hype? What's reality? Then understand how this product is made and look at what takes for this product to be made, actually, and then try and find the companies that are making this possible besides the car manufacturer himself. As Steve said, companies that make materials. If we're talking about EVs, how is the grid going to need? The grid's going to need upgrades in order to support all the population switching to EVs. So who are those companies that are going to make this happen? Who are those companies that provide all this equipment for the grid to be upgraded? Who are those companies that are providing components to the EV manufacturers? Because it's easy to find thousands of videos on YouTube hyping up Tesla. Good. Who supplies Tesla though? Who is this company that supplies Tesla? Who is a B2B company who you don't know about them, you've never heard about them before, and they could be an S&P 500 company. Aptiv, for example, they are an S&P 500 company. When was the last time you went through the S&P 500 list and tried to find, okay, who are those companies? What do they do? But Aptiv is making £1,000 out of each EV that is sold. £1,000. So if let's say they supplied Tesla exclusively, and Tesla last year made 500,000 cars, that's 500,000 pounds in Aptiv's pocket. And they don't just supply Tesla, they supply BMW, they supply other companies. So you need to look into that, understand what you're investing to, understand the business. And that's what one of the biggest investors of all time said, Warren Buffett. If you don't understand what this company is doing, don't invest in this company. It's that simple.
Those were some amazing thoughts, Steve, Manos, and I totally echo what you're saying. As a new investor, I know that there are some channels who are very big proponents of keeping your stock portfolio, maybe one trick pony, right? Like there are people who have invested just in Tesla. There's nothing wrong with that because everybody's risk tolerance is different. My risk tolerance is very different from Manos, from Steve, because we are a different age group, we have different background, we have different investment experience, and same is the case with you. So you need to understand as an investor, what is your risk tolerance? What is your time horizon? Absolutely. Are you investing for an year? Are you investing for 5 years, 10 years, whatever be the case? And then decide. And also, are you an active investor or a passive investor? Because that also plays a big role. Because if you are investing in hype companies, you have to be very active. You need to trade at the onset of the news. You cannot wait 5 days and then you will lose your you'll be the bag holder. So once you understand those, it is easy to and trust me, you will not remain the same investor. As you grow through your years of investing, you will change, you will evolve, you will learn, and you will become better at investing. So that's all we have for today's show, and I really want to thank Steve and Manos for bringing their expertise today for this discussion. I think I learned
a
lot
for having us.
Yeah, I learned a lot from about hydrogen and electricity because I had to do a lot of research when I was talking here, and this is something which we will continue doing. So we have some plans to talk about it. So definitely, if you're watching this after the live stream has ended, we have Steve from Disruptive Wealth Creation. The link is in the description. Please like and follow. We have Manos from Money, Whiskey, and Coffee. Great channels. I highly recommend you guys go check their channel out, follow, and we'll bring more content like this. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Manos. This was a great discussion. I really loved it, and I hope our viewers will love it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.